Okay, so we're about to begin. I want to welcome the council members who are running in the upcoming primaries. We had I think, a wonderful learning experience over the past year and a half. Certainly with Elsie, as we got to know her much better, and she got to know the community differently and perhaps much better. But we learned from each other, and we became friends in a certain way. We learned to hear each other's voices, which probably everybody in their own silos weren't really listening to what the other person was saying. We were really trying to understand their feelings. And it's been I think, personally, a wonderful experience. I didn't know what we'd be getting into when we first started with the book reading at the Highland Park Library. And when you're in your own silo, you think everybody thinks the same way you do. And it turns out that's not true. They don't even necessarily understand you, even though you're speaking the same language. So what we want to do as CJJPAC is really offer Elsie and Matt, who has not been on the council up till now, he's been obviously involved in other committees and commissions, an opportunity to address the community, the Jewish community, as CJJPAC is oriented and focused, although certainly not only in that sense, because we're members of the community, and allow them to share with us their thoughts, their vision for Highland Park and how they view governance, and allow us to interact with them in a series of questions which we think are important to the community. But certainly, if they want to share some other ideas, some other thoughts that we're not raising, or the panel's not raising, certainly they should do that. So without any further ado, let me turn this over first to Elsie for her to share, and she's a senior statesman on this Zoom meeting, to share with us her vision and how she views governance in Highland Park.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you so much for the opportunity. The past year was an excellent learning opportunity for me. I have been on the council for a number of years, almost 20 years now, and I've worked in various capacities. My current portfolio is public safety, all of public safety. So, and COVID has put that to the test too. As long as COVID, Black Lives Matters, and everything else, and dealing with the anti-Semitism bill, that was also testing, and it was an opportunity for me to understand the community a lot better. I know that we've had many meetings where I was a babe coming in, and I got matured, and I walked out, and I became stronger. I educated myself. I had many conversations, looked at videos, and all of you sent me books, material, tapes, videos, conversation, meetings, and it was good. Because as you said, Mark, we oftentimes live in our own silos, and we're not aware. Not that we don't care, but the awareness is not there oftentimes for us to delve deep, into what's going on in this community. Let's take a closer look and see the plight. Because I've always felt, and I continue to feel, that the Black and the Jewish community are on the same journey. We have always been, for lack of a better word, in the same boat. Our destinies and our journeys are parallel. They're the same in many ways. And for half of the victories that we've seen here in the US with the Black and Jewish community, that was done in partnership. From the beginning of the NAACP and many other movements, that has been done for the empowerment of both of our communities. So that has been wonderful. And last year we were saying, how do we build that back? And I think that we're at the pivotal time in history to rekindle that relationship, revisit it, and make it much more vibrant and stronger.
Thank you so much, Elsie. I appreciate that. Appreciate what you had to say and your warm thoughts. Matt, you are the newcomer on the council. although you're a veteran in so many different important issues for this community. I know that you and I have not known each other at the beginning, quote unquote, at the genesis of the relationship over the past year and a half. But I have found you, even we're on different sides of the issues, or we became aligned perhaps later on, that your humanity and your sense of justice is overwhelming. So we welcome you in this primary and becoming a member of the council, and we'd like you to share your thoughts and your vision and how you view governance in Highland Park.
Thank you, Mark. I really appreciate that introduction, and the feeling is mutual. I mean, I think before we even get into any of that, one of the things I think that excites all of us, particularly when we have that kind of community experience, is meeting new people. There's an infinite number of people to know.
We lost Matt.
Oops, sorry, I'm here.
Okay.
We
can't lose you yet, Matt.
No. Sorry. I think through every kind of experience, whether it's always amazing to understand that, like you said, in a very small town, there's always more people to learn from. There's always more people to meet, new friends to make, and new communities to build. So that is, fundamentally one of the things that excites me most about serving on the council, or just serving in a volunteer capacity, or anything that we do outwardly for the community on issues that we believe in. This is my technically my second time around on the council. I served with Elsie very brief, for a wonderful 20 months back in 2016 and 17, and I had to leave for a job for professional endeavor that I had taken at the time. That has now I'm no longer restricted. So I really welcome the opportunity to talk to the CJJPAC, as well as really picking up the work that we had been doing where we left off. So thank you for this opportunity, first and foremost. I think the council, I think a little bit about me. I moved here in 2008. My wife Christine and I have 3 kids in the schools. We have a kindergarten, rising 4th and 6th graders, and so we love Highland Park. We love what we see in Highland Park. I think, like all of us, we tend to think of ways that we can help to improve Highland Park, in a positive way, and work with the community on addressing the needs that we all face. Because I think one of the things that the council, the council's fundamental role is to, is making decisions with the budget. That the fundamental role of the council is to is addressing the purse strings. And I think that Highland Park being a small town with limited revenue sources, that there are ways to be creative and really think outside the box on how we can make the most of finite resources here in town. Whether it's improving municipal services, whether it's starting new programs, or addressing difficult issues that can help educate the public. So we don't have a lot of leeway there, but I think that one of the exciting things about this town is that, as you know, there is a strong volunteer bandwidth in the community. There are very passionate residents who are very knowledgeable about a number of issues. And so I think that it's really an opportunity on the council to be a conduit to the community and make sure that people have a voice, and people know how to organize, and people know how to promote the issues that are important to them. Because nobody on the council that I can think of is dogmatic about these municipal issues. And I think that I think everybody is there willing to learn and listen and work with residents. So that's really what excites me about the council's fundamental purpose and serving.
Well, welcome back, Matt. I obviously was not aware that you're on the council earlier, but welcome back, and we look for the opportunity to work with you. We have several issues that we're going to be addressing in this town hall meeting. One of which is policing, the other is anti-Semitism, the third is race issues, and the fourth are general town issues. We have three panelists, that being Josh Przansky, John Kovac, and Michael Gordon. So what I'd like to do is at this point turn it over to Josh Przansky to address the issues around policing.
Good morning. Thank you, Mark. Welcome to Councilwoman Foster-Dublin, former Councilman Matt Hersh, and soon to be current council or future Councilman Matt Hersh.
Matt.
That's right. Yes, you said the first time I met you when your beard was black. That's why you shaved off the white beard. But anyway, and I love your realistic background over there, Matt. But anyway, I want to have three questions to ask you on policing. These are questions that were submitted by members of our community. It's not necessarily my questions, but they want me to ask you these questions and get your opinion. Number one, we understand that there is
the only time we'll ever find Josh following instructions, by the way. Go ahead, Josh.
That's right. The outside the box. We understand there is a blue flu affecting our area. Again, we're talking about policing right now. What is your position on that, Councilwoman Foster-Dublin?
The blue flu has been infecting the Black and brown community since the beginning of this country. 401 years ago to this year, we have always had that problem. From coming out of slavery to, we see one of the most prominent areas we see when there was a Black Wall Street that was established, that is in Tulsa, where we had a thriving Black community that worked hard to pull themselves up by the bootstring. They were financially successful. And then you had these militias or police groups that came in and totally destroyed communities. We see that in the way, not just George Floyd, but we can go back and see from in Florida with Trayvon Martin, we see where people felt that they were empowered to have police powers and stand your ground and shoot a 17-year-old kid with a can of soda and Skittles. We've seen where Fernando Castile was targeted constantly. He was pulled over 18 times in 1 month. And the infraction was that his lights may have been out and he had his kid in the backseat of the car. Officer pulled up and next thing you know, he's shooting and this person is blown away. So it's nothing new. What has happened with George Floyd was people were home with the coronavirus, the epidemic that we're all facing. And this happened, the cameras were rolling and people get to see a personal up close vision of how Black and brown bodies are treated in the US. And so it hasn't been new. We happened to be home, have nothing else to do but watch TV constantly and replay the video, and we saw the plight of Black and brown people in this country. And that's what started the movement. That's what is propelling the movement. And that's where people are not just saying, oh, it's sad and something needs to change. People are working towards a new change and to make changes happen. And so, we've been shouting from the rooftop for years, but it appears that no one was listening. And that's a broad brush, but people were listening, but not to the magnitude of where they're listening now. And so therefore, where we are today is to create changes within the police department across the nation. Changes must begin to start happening there. There's a lot of areas that needs to be changed, need to be looked at, but effective police needs to happen as well. We can't say get rid of police departments. That's totally irresponsible. We can't say slash police budgets without looking at each individual towns and looking at what kind of services that is being provided. It's not a one-size-fits-all solution. And so everything has to be looked at carefully as it pertains to police departments, cutting budgets, providing more social services, and serving, protecting the needs of its residents.
Thank you. Councilman Matt Hersh.
Sorry, you see I'm keeping the mute on, and that's why you see my finger, kind of pressing the unmute button. No, thank you for the question. It's I agree with Elsie. I mean, I think the I don't know if I'd call it a blue flu, but it's certainly an awareness, you know, a very quickly rising awareness nationwide of the kind of injustices that the Black community faces, you know, every day when just doing the routine things that, you know, we all do every day. That at any moment, you know, we could have an interaction, we could get pulled over, we can have a interaction with police or another resident that goes terribly wrong, and then all of a sudden lives are at risk. So that that's something that we need to take really seriously and figure out and understand why it happens, and figure out what it is that we can do locally to keep that from happening. I think one of the fundamental, you know, another foundational role of any municipal government or any community is to make sure that residents are safe in their homes and outside their and in their communities, you know, and that they are not subjected to you know, violence or harm or anything that removes their dignity. And so if we have institutions that are contributing to that, well, then we do have to look at that. And I think that, you know, any objective assessment of what's going on now understands that the police are, you know, the police do have a certain responsibility over addressing equity in our communities. So that is something that I look forward to working with Elsie on, and making sure that, you know, we look at not only the police but all of the other factors that you know, potentially put people in harm's way, and that's I think that's a noble and important long-term goal of the community, let alone the council.
Thank you. Next question.
Can I touch on that a little bit more? You know,
Sure.
Matt mentioned that we also, it's not just the police department, but it's our community. And a large part of what is propelled here in Highland Park, in my tenure being here, it's what comes from the community. And so there has been, I want to say, a long-standing history where people would call the police department and say, I see somebody that doesn't look like they belong in my community. And of course, the police have to respond. But what we have done recently, in a very proactive stand, is to ask the question: what makes that person don't belong? What is that person doing that you feel that this person is threatening? What are they doing something? No, they're walking down the street. Are they looking in cars? But are they looking in the cars? They move on. You know, so there's a lot more questions that's being asked from our dispatcher to make it clear, because we have a lot of residents that call in and say, oh, we saw so-and-so walking down the street and we don't know what they're doing. And so there's a responsibility as well of our residents that we need to be cognizant of. Why are we calling the police? If you see someone walking down the street, doesn't necessarily mean they're there to do you harm. They may just be walking through the neighborhood, and this call has been generated. It puts the person, the Black person that you see walking down your neighborhood, it puts them in a very uncomfortable position, but it also puts the police officer in an uncomfortable position as well. So there's a lot of pieces that we have to consider. When you know, before we make the call, ask ourselves, we have to do some internalization as well and ask those questions of ourselves. Is this person being threatening? Are they breaking in cars? Are they doing something untoward? We just call in the police because you think that person doesn't belong in that community. That's a big part of our personal responsibility as residents.
Josh, may I ask from a time management standpoint, perhaps you can consolidate the next two questions because they address some similar issues.
Okay, so the next two questions, and I will consolidate as per the moderator, and I think this one only pertains to Councilwoman Foster-Dublin because Matt Hersh is not on the council right now. Have the police been told to systematically ignore certain crimes or infractions? And number two, members of the Jewish community are quite concerned, and you alluded to this before, about any reduction in the police budget. Are there any plans to do that, and what is your position on that?
First question, that I think, no, the police has not been told to watch any particular areas, individuals, or actions. No, none of that has been done. What we have strived to do is to hire officers that are interested in doing good community policing, to providing for the needs of all our residents, not some, all, very inclusive. We know, especially I know, that the Jewish community, like my community, the Black and Brown community, is targeted heavily. And we have seen countless across this country where we have seen the targeting of the Jewish community and deliberate targeting. And that doesn't stop. We wish it would, but we're as I said, we're in the same boat. That kind of behavior hasn't stopped. However, we encourage our police department to provide the ultimate care for all our residents. When it comes to the budget, we are looking at the budget to see where we can provide services that would be necessary and needed. But we're not planning on slashing any budget at this point, because we have to review the budget and we have to make intelligent choices, because we have communities that need community services. You know, police department is not just one structure that's there to take away persons' rights, but it's also what their main core of their duties to serve and protect. And in Highland Park, with a large Jewish community presence, I know that there's certain high holidays and certain times that we have to be extra vigilant in those areas, that we need to go out and the police department need to go out and provide these services to ensure everyone's safety. Because years ago, I was on this group where wherever the threats that came up for the Jewish community, we would get the alert. You know, and that started years ago. So I started seeing all that stuff years ago. And I know, just like in our community, it happens in the Jewish community all the time. So to decrease service and to not provide services for neighborhoods or for people that are always being threatened or harassed, that's not an option.
Thank you. Matt, the first part of the question you could ignore because, again, you're not on the council now, so this is not within your purview. But the second part of the question of whether the police department, whether there are plans to slash the budget and things like that, what would be your position? I know it's been on various Facebook chats in town. There's been people talking both ways, so I just like to know on both sides of the equation, what is your opinion?
Sure. Just you know, and on the second point, even though I'm not, you know, obviously I'm not involved currently. To ignore crimes or infractions is not legal, and you know, obviously the police act on answer to the county prosecutor and to the attorney general's office. So that would be very concerning if that's happening anywhere. But when it comes to the police budget. The police budget is a significant portion of our municipal budget, and I think that, you know, every year there needs to be a discussion around budgetary matters and looking at efficiencies and where we need to prioritize. So if we do need if there are public safety concerns happening in Highland Park where we do need to bolster our resources or consolidate resources or realign or reappropriate resources, or make sure that there are other services available that may not need a police response, but may need more of a professionalized response of social services and so forth. I think that's an important discussion to have, particularly when we're talking about, you know, guys right now when it comes to dealing community. So I do think that there are important discussions to have. I am very much supportive of our police department, and I think that they have to, and I think that they provide you know, an invaluable role here in town. And you know, what we want to do is, I think what we want to do is we want to make sure that the police department is the best police department that it can be, serving the needs of the community and in response to what the community says its needs are, and also make sure that it just provides the best service possible. So I know that's not a, you know, when it comes to reductions or increases, I can't really speak on that yet, but I do think that it's a, I think that any element of our budget needs to be up for discussion. And if we are thinking about public safety differently, where can we, where can we consolidate some energies? Where do we need to pull in other resources, and so forth? So I think that would be my approach going into any budgetary discussion.
Thank you. Back to the moderator.
Follow-up question.
Let's just move on to the next one, please, John, because we have a time limit on the Zoom. So what I'd like to do now is move to John Kovac to address issues on anti-Semitism. All these questions came in from the community. So John is going to raise these questions and go through these with you as we have responses from the community. Please, John.
Okay, so for Matt and Elsie, BDS groups through a campaign called Deadly Exchange blame Israel and American Jewish organizations for police shootings of African Americans, including George Floyd, essentially working to poison Black-Jewish relations. What position will you take in separating Israel from domestic racial issues and preventing propaganda that would poison Black-Jewish relations in Highland Park?
I must say that that's the first time when I saw that question was the first time I ever heard of anything like that, because I thought it was just ridiculous. Like, really? I saw that question, I was like, what? That's ridiculous, that's insane. I was not aware that there was any kind of, neither do I believe that there's any kind of Jewish agenda to create anarchy, to create chaos, to create dysfunction amongst the Blacks and the Jewish community. So that question really blew me away. I was like, I've never heard of it, but not because I've never heard of it that it might not be out there, but I think that the track that we started last year and earlier this year, saying that we need to have honest conversations about the relationship. We need to have education, just like many of you had taken the time out to provide me books, materials, phone calls, sit-down meals, to talk about and to educate me about anti-Semitism, the BDS movement. I think that part of that education can't go away, and we really need that, especially now. For example, under the Human Relations Commission here in Highland Park, there's an anti-Semitism group that is now meeting. And I think that has been put in place. They haven't met yet. They have been put in place because of COVID. No one has met yet. But I think this came out of also the discussion that we had last year into early part of this year. So we have to continue to educate, and to, when people are making up these lies and coming out and saying all this stuff, we must be able to equip our our residents with correct information. So I think that's one of the things that I think our anti-Semitism group here in Highland Park needs to get on really quickly through the Human Relations and have a conversation with the Human Relations to debunk any of this. Because I was horrified when I heard that this morning. We have to move on a path where disinformation, we have to call it out, just like we see now on Facebook and all these groups that are gearing up and saying, no, you have to tell the truth. We're not gonna put up with these lies that's being floated across. So we have the same responsibility here in Highland Park to educate, not only in Highland Park, let Highland Park be the ripple in the pond and let it spread on out.
Elsie, thank you. I really appreciate your answer. Matt?
I had not heard of the Deadly Exchange, and it's horrifying to think about, because I think that we, even on the micro level in Highland Park, we've dealt with folks from outside organizations who have come to town to try to kind of exploit the emotions and the feelings, potentially the lives of our residents, and this is the kind of thing that, really gets me upset. I think it's all of us upset, because it is a direct assault on an effort to engage in an education process, understanding, and coming together as a community, which is difficult at times, but it's an achievable goal in a town like Highland Park, where we have so much in common just through our daily interactions. And seeing these types of efforts that try to divide people on the backs of folks who have perished, in the, as you know, who have been victims to societal oppression and either racism or anti-Semitism. It's just horrifying. So we would work with work with any group possible to try to stamp to try to stamp out that type of divisive and dangerous thinking to kind of that would divide Black-Jewish relations, because I think, as Elsie said, there's so much commonality between the two communities, and I think we can share in our experiences. So when it comes to propaganda entering town, we have to bend over backwards. We have to aggressively and proactively and preventively, in fact, really let people know the facts on the ground, have community discussions, make sure that people who are aware of what's going on are able to and are knowledgeable are able to speak to the community and then help the council make decisions accordingly, because this is efforts like this are horrifying, and we have to do everything we can to keep it from happening.
Thank you for your answer, Matt. So in retrospect, just for both of you, what are your feelings about the fight to pass the anti-Semitism resolution in town, and how did your feelings evolve over the course of the struggle?
What did I think of the fight? At first, from my perspective, when I first heard about the group coming into town, I didn't see any harm. I had no clue. I was totally clueless. I was not aware of the BDS movement. I was not aware of the Peace for Palestine movement. I was not aware of any of it. And it took me months to learn and to understand and to see the plight of, because there were different groups within the Jewish community that had different opinions and thoughts and what have you. And growing up, we were always of the opinion that the Jewish people are so together, they are so organized, they are so much on one page. They get along perfectly. It's a seamless operation, because once you see them do something, that they all are in tandem. So when this happened here in Highland Park, I was like, that's not what I was taught. That's not what I believe, because the relationship always seems so seamlessly. So that was a huge, huge eye opener for me, to learn about the different communities within the Jewish faith, to say, and then to see all the different opinions that was being displayed. And I said repeatedly in meetings that if you can't decide, why do you expect me to decide? And when I said that, it was coming from years and years of this idea that all the Jewish people are in tandem, they work together, and they're one seamless community. So when that came up, and I kept on saying, if you guys can't decide this, why do you think that I should be the person to decide it? That's when the real education came in for me. And that's when I got super educated. I met with many of you. We had conversations, as I said before. We had talks, the emails, the books. As a matter of fact, I have books now that I don't remember who gave me the books, and I would like to return them, and I don't remember who dropped the books off to me. But I do have books, and I did take an opportunity to educate myself, to listen, to really, really listen and see what the issues are, and to not only listen, read books, take conversations, but to within myself, to take a look at and see how different is this fight, and once I got to where I saw the issue clearly, it was a choice that I had to make on the side of right, to move this resolution along and to ensure that our Jewish brothers and sisters within our communities, not just here locally in Highland Park, but everywhere, is protected. And that is critical, because as we see now, we're asking the same thing. And so it's us seeing the plight of someone else, moving outside ourselves and taking a look and see what's really going on, not just standing above the weeds, but probably going into the weeds like I did, and to see what the problems were and to see what this really was for what it is, and then moving forward and making a decision that I believe that will protect our Jewish brothers and sisters.
Thank you for listening to us. I appreciate that. Matt?
Thanks, John. Yeah, that was an let me figure out where I should start with this one. This anti-Semitism in Highland Park is something that we need to tackle head on. I think going into this process, into this discussion, I don't think I came very quickly to understand that threats against Israel were fueling negative thought toward the Jewish community, and that it really did present an existential threat, which is something that I think we all need to understand, you know, as a Jewish community, but also as just as a Highland Park community. You know, we need to understand it as far as, you know, because we have historical reference. You know, my great grandparents, you know, faced oppression. I think that we have to fight to pass anti-Semitism resolutions and measures in town. I think what we also have to do, though, is make sure that something that is so pure and essential in terms of protecting the dignity and health and safety of any of our populations, we need to do it in a way that does not sow division. And I think there were a number of things just in the kind of process, you know, when you talk about the local council, that we could have done better in terms of kind of navigating that process, because it got really heated, and every now and then you had to sit back and understand that, you know, I'm meeting, you know, all these wonderful new people, some people that I already did know, you know, and we're witnessing fights between, you know, friends and family, and just wondering why, when we weren't doing that before. What was missing from that process that can make us have a more fruitful and more.
What do you think could have been done better?
It,
If you were to read, what would you do?
Yeah, I think. So I guess, I mean, I guess, Elsie, I can point back to the community process that when you know, when Highland Park was discussing being an inclusive community that protected the rights of immigrants, and really outlining, you know, the clear role of public safety in immigration enforcement. What we had to do, though, was, because it's not an issue that a lot of folks were familiar with, so we hosted some town hall meetings, presented with some difficult questions, were, you know, fielded criticism from all political spectrums. There was just from one. I do think that there was time there because of the amount of time that was spent on the anti-Semitism resolution between when it was first introduced and when it was passed. I mean, I think that we're looking at August when the Human Relations Commission, which I'm a member of, first really discussed it in detail, to when the final passage happened, you know, earlier this year. I think there was time to really put this out to the community and really talk about what it is that the borough was trying to achieve. That there are incidents that are happening in the United States, in our community right now, that are putting the Jewish community at risk. That we are deploying members of our police department to survey, you know, our synagogues, you know, on high holy days, or even organized days when there's services. Sorry.
Yeah, I have a follow-up question for you. If there was a Boycott Israel group once again attempted to surreptitiously feed anti-Semitism to the youth of Highland Park, as with the library reading, how would you approach that if the Jewish community came to you and said, this is not acceptable?
I would agree that this is not acceptable. Then we need to you know, we would need to figure out how to address that with the library, but then also understand that the destruction of Israel is not something that we support in Highland Park. That's and we need to make that clear to our members of our state legislature and whoever that we can, because it's not acceptable. I agree.
Hey, thank you. Elsie, briefly, because I've taken up enough time already, if you could just answer that last question and then we can move on to other areas.
Totally unacceptable.
Thank you. Next.
Yeah, so let me move on to Michael. Michael will address issues that we kind of touched on already on the what we call the Black, people of color, and Jewish community, and how to enhance that relationship and your views on that. But let me turn that over to Michael to specifically ask the questions the members of the community had raised.
Great, thank you very much again, Elsie, and Matt, thank you for joining this today. Elsie, you and I have discussed this privately. I've discussed it with Ashton Burrell, that the Jewish community historically has been allies of marginalized groups. Historically, was there in the beginning of the civil rights movement right through. What seemed to upset some people in the community was we didn't see any reciprocity back of anybody supporting us during that fight last year, starting actually in May to the thing. And what can we do moving forward to establish a mutual beneficial relationship between the people of color in town and other marginalized groups and the Jewish community to be together?
I think, as I said earlier, that when the P is for Palestine book was proposed at the library, well, we, as a governing body, somebody who sits in the governing body, we were not made aware of this book coming in until afterwards, way long afterwards. And then when the community actually brought it to our attention, and the book was the start of an education for me. And I'm speaking of myself, Elsie, a Black person or from the Black and brown community, that when this book came in, we weren't educated enough to understand the implication of what the book was what the people who bought the book in town, what was it that they were trying to create, what kind of a environment they were coming in, what their intent was. And so I believe the reason why you did not see a groundswell of support from the Black and brown community is that it's the lack of education that we did not have. Although it took almost a year, or some would say a year and a half, for the council to make a decision and for us to have many heated, cantankerous meetings, and for the materials to come in and, all the division that this had caused, it educated us. Because when I walk in my neighborhood or when I would talk to friends, it was like, really, what is this about? It's just a book. And that's how we saw it. But we did not see all the stuff that was beyond the book. That was the reason beyond that. What was the purpose why this book was chosen for this particular community? We had no clue. All we saw was, oh, it's a children's book. And we had no idea what the whole intent behind the book was. So it took us that time to be educated, to get the full education out. And although the process was long and we wanted was to make it quick and we should have moved on, and we talked about doing a million different things as we now Monday morning quarterback the whole process. I think it was beneficial for me for it to have been drawn out that long, not just for me, but in the Black and brown communities and people who are not familiar. I thought the education of this whole process and going through the steps by steps benefited a lot of other communities that are not a lot of our non-Jewish communities. And I think that piece of education went a long way. So now when there's things that have percolated, we would be much more in line and in lockstep. And it has not been lost on us that the beginning, the formation of the NAACP started with our Jewish brothers and sisters over 100 years ago. So that has not been lost on us. What we both are responsible for, I believe, in my personal opinion, is that we allow the relationship to last. collectively, we allowed that relationship that was built with the NAACP, with my black and Jewish brothers and sisters, and through Martin Luther King and through the years, it seemed like after King passed, everyone was in such despair that that relationship just fell by the wayside, and there was no one actively taking and moving on this relationship. And I think that's the problem. Now that we're in this era where we're looking at Black Lives Matter, and we're looking at how we stand in Highland Park, how do we stand together? I think this is an opportunity for us here on the local level to build the relationship and have it ripple out across.
And Matt, did you?
No, thank you, Mike. I'll just add that, you know, we have a really justice-minded community here, and we have a lot of knowledgeable people who can help us navigate, you know, who can help us navigate and make sure that we are doing the things that, you know, achieve, you know, a real justice agenda on the municipal level. And anytime that you see somebody try to disrupt that, or anytime that the discussion of justice kind of sows division, then I think that we really need to just kind of reassess and look at how that's being done. And if there is somebody trying to kind of sow a divide, you know, within the community when they are trying to work out these important discussions because they want to, then we need to stamp that out, and we need to do everything that we can to go a different direction.
Yeah, you know, what I'm hoping for the future, you know, working together, but also when we do call something out as anti-Semitism, we're believed. Just like if someone of color says it's racism, I believe them. Someone's LBGT, they say it's homophobic, I believe them because that's where they're coming from. But Elsie, follow up what you said about the recent Black Lives Matter. It's a phenomenon, overwhelming. You know, it's historic what we're living through right now. But a lot of people in the Jewish community, especially in Highland Park, are leery of stepping in and helping because of the official Black Lives Matter organization in 2016 added a pro-BDS anti-Israel plan to their platform, which has since been removed from the website. There's no mention of it. But these other splinter groups have been coming out that, like John had mentioned, there was a Black Lives Matter march Wednesday in DC that coincided with a day of rage against Israel, which the Palestinian groups had called for. And I know our discussions was always about that fear of social justice organizations being taken over by an anti-Israel agenda. And right now, a lot of people in the community would want to come out and support, and are coming out and supporting the Black Lives Matters at the march down Raritan in front of Borough Hall. But they want to be assured that they're going to be included in this and not going to wake up one day and be found that they're excluded because they're pro-Israel, they're Zionistic. Can you address that? And you said you just learned about it and heard about, but can you address that to assure the Jewish community that we can be part of this?
I want to answer by saying that I have personally had many conversations with many sectors of the Jewish community that are engaged and want to see the change with Black Lives Matters, and different rabbis and different Jewish groups that are interested in making a change, interested in lending their voice, and to make sure that there is a real change, not something that's, you know, a Band-Aid on a problem, and working in solidarity with the Black community and the Jewish community. And as with everything else these days, things get corrupted real easily. You always have some fringe group that comes and attach themselves to the just cause, so to speak. And we have a responsibility to speak truth to power. And if we don't, when we have that opportunity to speak truth to power, then we are going to be in the same predicament that we have been in. And so when we have people that have been historically have been loyal, have been good friends, have been good stewards, have stand with us through all the trials, this is not the time for us to start looking at other groups that are coming in and who are disruptors, and to create anarchy, to create distrust and dissent amongst us. I can speak from where I sit here in Highland Park, and I am not aware of any of those groups that you mentioned, What I am aware of is that Black and brown people and others, and my Jewish brothers and sisters here in Highland Park, have called, and we want to work to make the change happen. As you know, I like to say that Highland Park is this little tiny bedroom community, and a lot of academia is here. And we have a lot of people that we can sit together and we can put things together to make the change here in town, to be the model, and then have what we're doing, like throwing a rock in the pond and have it balloon out to other areas. And I think that we can do that here in Highland Park. We have done a lot of things that a lot of groups have looked at and said, wow, they do that really well. We can do the same thing with this whole division and people tearing each other apart. And for us to come together and work in solidarity, we don't have to buy into the hate that others want to see happen. I don't believe that. I think in Highland Park, we're bigger than that. We're better than that.
Thank you, Elsie. Wonderful. And Matt, I know part of the Human Relations Council, we've talked about that also, of being, you know, you're the barrier from that happening in town. What are your thoughts on that, as well as just not just Black Lives Matters, but other environmental groups, immigration groups that have been taken over? And, you know, we want to make sure that we can be involved in as much social justice in Highland Park, and we're welcome, even though we're strong supporters of the state of Israel and Zionism.
It's not, I mean, the thing that I never, and thank you, because, you know, it's, and I don't have a punchy answer for that, but I will say that it makes no sense that there is this mutual, or that some view that there's this mutual exclusivity between the existence of the state of Israel and justice, kind of, you know, broadly. That you know, when we're talking about Black Lives Matter as a movement and not an organization, I need to read more about this, but as a movement, I think as a justice movement, to make sure that people are not subjected to harm, that is something that that many of us can identify with, you know, in one form, in one way or another, and there does not seem to be a reason why we should be trying to sow, you know, within that discussion. So I think that the Jewish community has a you know, incredibly strong and proud heritage of pursuing justice, based in its own oppression, but being allies in justice movements, in the civil rights movement, in the Black Lives Matter movement. When we were having the local discussion on immigrant rights, members of the Jewish community were strong allies in those efforts, from Reform to Orthodox. So it was I've never seen evidence of any time where, you know, with willing in pursuit of justice, we should be by you know, by other issues that take our focus off of, you know, the goal of making sure that people are safe and can live their lives without fear. We just, I mean, on the local level, we have to take a strong stand against any effort to undo that progress. And there's a lot to learn about it, and I think you know, I just want to echo what Elsie said. She said it better than I did.
Well, we look forward to working with everybody, you know, mutually helping. Thank you very much.
So we have a few minutes left of, we got some more time, let's say another 5 or 10 minutes. I'd like to turn it over to Josh, who will ask some questions that the community was concerned about relating to town issues.
Thank you, Mark. For the sake of expediency, I'm going to drop the question about the shopping bag ban. Now that it's temporarily rescinded, will become permanently rescinded. I'm not going to discuss the deer and how we get them to humanely move to Edison instead of killing them. And I'm going to focus on, excuse me, community development. 2 questions, which is really 1 question. Number 1, there are many stores that are empty on Raritan Avenue. If you drive into town from New Brunswick, Right away, when you between First and Second, you have half a block of empty stores. The gas station's been empty for a long time. BB Big behind that's been empty for a long time. On the other side of the street, the gun shop has been closed for a long time. What is being done to see that area plus all the stores on the avenue become a thriving downtown? How to make sure every store is occupied? How do we make sure that every store we're doing business in this town, bringing in revenues not only from our own community, from other communities, to make it really a thriving business district? The second part of my question will then shift to community development. What are we doing in town to develop more affordable housing, to make residential housing more affordable, and one that by bringing in more people to live here will again help us, number one, reduce our tax burden, which is high, and number two, bring in more business to support our local business, bring in more customers, I should say, to support our local businesses. Councilwoman Foster-Dublin.
Wow, you said a lot.
Thank you.
To remember, but those are all excellent questions. What are we doing economic development? What are we doing to sustain the economics of our town? And I think that that's the bigger part. Downtown redevelopment has been huge. Ever since I have been on the council, downtown redevelopment has been, for a small town, have been one of the driving forces to keep those storefronts filled with good stores that people want to see in our town, where people are going to go and shop, where it's going to be utilized. Yes, we do have some blighted areas on the avenue. I can say that the gun shop, Bergen Auto, all of those are the international market, gun shop, international market, Bergen Auto, all of those are in development. International market, as you can see, the construction is still continuing on there. We have purchased the Bergen Auto and the gun shop, so we're looking for you'll be seeing improvements in those areas, because the gun shop, obviously, it's been there for a long time. Since I came to town, it has never, that was some 20-something years ago, I have never seen that store open. So we have made some forward strides in getting rid of the gun shop, and we're going to clean up that area and to encourage business to come into town and to do some redevelopment, and not just develop the areas, but also encourage local business on the ground floor, and then apartment downtown living on the upper areas. So it keeps a generation of flow of traffic and people in our downtown areas. And our young people in particular, they like to live in downtown. So we're trying to create that for businesses to come in that have that kind of upstairs downtown, upstairs living downtown retail. So that's one of the things that we're looking at as it pertains to that. When we look at in the downtown area over on River Road, there's development that old doctor's office is now being torn down, and there's going to be more living space there, and all of that will, everything that we've put together so far will include affordable housing. So a part of everything that we do as it pertains to living space and residential living, we keep an eye on making sure that we have affordable living for persons who need those kind of efficiencies. We make sure that that's accounted for in every plan that comes to us. So we've been very strident at making that happen. I forgot, you had one more question. The Sunoco. The Sunoco, that's privately owned. We have been in conversations with the owner to see what we can do to move that process along. The conversation continues. BB Big, we're in conversation with BB Big. We're formerly BB Big, with that whole block over there, because everything on that block is now closed. So that conversation is still going on to see what it is that we can do to bring into our downtown. One of the things that is going extremely well in our downtown is the farmers market. The farmers market is a driver for our downtown. It brings traffic in from all over, from people from Edison and New Brunswick, Metuchen, and surrounding towns. They love our farmers market, and that's a driver. When the farmers market is in, people shop in other restaurants and stores, so there's an opportunity for funds to be generated, money to be spent in our downtown. And we're continuously looking to see how can we improve our downtown? How do we fill our storefronts, and how do we provide quality of life for our downtown residents and for our overall residency in Highland Park. Because once the downtown is stable, it generates income. It also helps with tax stabilization as well. And those are some of the things that when we look at a complete package to make sure that we can stabilize the taxes for people who live here in town, make Highland Park an affordable place to live and a desirable place to live as well.
Thank you. Matt?
Thanks, Josh. Just to echo what Elsie said about downtown, we have, we're working with organizations like Main Street Highland Park, but also with on the council, I would like to see, I would like to work very, very closely, or see the council work very closely with the property owners downtown too. And that's, I'm not just talking about the store owners, who might be more vocal in the process, but also, a lot of the building owners that are downtown are absentee. And that's a negative term, but they might just not live here. And so they may not be aware of what some of the aims of the local downtown are. And Elsie, forgive me if that's happening regularly. But it's I think for some of the building owners, and you look at the old Sunoco, or you look at BB Big, or you look at the old bike shop, on the corner of where Pino's used to be, on the corner of South 4th and Raritan, North 4th and Raritan. Having a regular and routine dialogue with the property owners downtown, I think, is integral to kind of moving things forward. So whether that comes to addressing vacant retail spaces, because I can tell you, our economy, like a lot of downtowns, struggles, of course, and especially during Corona time, during COVID times. But a lot of our vacant retail spaces are not necessarily because of the market or even because of rent, but because they are not being aggressively marketed to be filled. So there are vacancies where you might just have landlords who are not addressing those vacancies. One thing that is encouraging is that I think we are learning, in the COVID times, about how businesses downtown can function, hopefully lucratively, through tweaking their business model. So the farmers market is open again. I hope to head there today. It's in person. You can walk up, wear a mask, but it's there are a lot of stores that have really thrived actually in the last few months because they were able to tailor their business model, focus more on online ordering, focus more on delivery. So you look at places like Sushiana or Pino's, or I think the record shop was doing well. There are a lot of stores that have adjusted their approach to make the best of capturing this Highland Park market. But one thing I do want to mention too, just to make downtown and just town more thriving economically, is walkability, pedestrian and bike safety. We live in a town where we have a philosophical and ideological and cultural, we prioritize pedestrian access from a ideological and cultural and philosophical standpoint. So having sidewalks that are able to accommodate our residents, so we can walk around downtown, so we can walk through the neighborhood, so we don't have to get in our car every time we want to go someplace, which would, getting in our car allows us to leave town and put our business elsewhere. So we don't want to, we want to try to keep all of our business in town. Doing things like that, making Highland Park as business friendly as possible. If there is red tape, I'm here. Sorry, if there is red tape on the municipal level when it comes to permits and approvals, we need to look at that and address them, and also work on ways to attract businesses to our downtown. But that involves a number of discussions with property owners and also from a policy standpoint with the council. Do you want me to answer the question on affordable housing?
Yeah, I'd just like to add something to that, if I could, Matt.
Sure, Mark.
And there is an ideological and cultural issue around walkability and bikeability. We have some very large families in the Jewish community with, 4, 5, 6 kids, and the moms with the vans. So drivability is not something we can quite ignore as we gentrify. Just as a passing comment,
Right.
I give it back to Josh and yourself.
Sure, go ahead.
I
Talk about
agree, Mark.
residential.
Yeah. Sorry.
You talk about the residential affordable housing. We're going to.
Oh, sure. Just and just what Mark says. You know, I don't exclude myself in any of that. I mean, we're all residents here. I drive. In normal times, I drive at least 80 miles a day. So it's it's access in and out of town is really important. We have 22,000 cars pass through on Raritan Avenue every day, which is just a mind-boggling number. And so to be able to not only alleviate that kind of traffic flow, in and out of town, but also potentially capture some of that automobile traffic that comes through to make sure that people do stop and are able to shop here. So yeah, it is. So thank you, Mark, for mentioning that, because I forget that I drive. Well, no, I mean, moms and I can momentarily forget that, wow, I drive a lot too. So I appreciate that. With affordable housing, yeah, housing affordability is a real concern. I think in town, it's one of the reasons why we chose to live here, because it was a great community, good schools, really tight knit, kind of bang for your buck, but taxes are high. We need to figure out other ways to generate sources of revenue to continue to stabilize municipal taxes. Obviously, schools are separate. But it's all a piece. So making sure that we have the kind of market forces that bring down housing affordability, I think, are a goal that we can strive for. So whether that's housing diversity, we have a lot of 2- and 4-family home across the street. I live on we all live on residential, unless we're on the avenue, we live on a residential street. Across the street from my single-family home, there are 5 2-family homes just in a row, and there's garden apartments, right over there. And so those are the types of things that we can do to kind of promote not only economic and social diversity, but they do have a market effect on home values. However, if we're homeowners, and 40% of us in Highland Park are homeowners, then we need to make sure that we protect our investment, and that we need to make sure that what we have put into our home we're not losing. So there's definitely a tension there that we need to approach. When it comes to state, and Josh, I think you know about the statewide mandates on affordable housing. That process is messy and is seemingly always in limbo. Of course, we need to figure out how to comply with the state's requirements when it comes to affordable housing. It's an area that I work in, but we also have to do it in a way that accommodates the needs of the community as well. So that's kind of the longer term answer. But affordability, stabilizing, and stabilizing taxes are, I think, a priority for all of the council members. Elsie, I don't want to speak on behalf of anybody else.
So I wanted to thank everybody. Do you have something else, Josh? Or
No, I say thank you, and back to Mark.
I want to thank everybody. It was a great opportunity to speak today and give you a platform to speak to the Jewish community on behalf of CJJPAC. But it's also been a wonderful journey and a delight for me to get to know both of you. And I'm sure for all the members of CJJPAC and the rest of the community who've had an opportunity to actually learn who you are as people, not just as somebody on a council. It's been a rewarding experience as well. Thank you so much.
I just want to echo, thank you for this opportunity, for giving us a platform to even reach out to more members of the Jewish community, and to say that we are here, we're united together, we're bonded together. And I look forward to working with each and every one in the community and building a better and a stronger Highland Park, and the kind of Highland Park that's going to be the model for other towns to follow.
Thank you.
So with that, I'm going to say Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Okay, bye now.
Bye.
Bye.